Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome especially to Srimala, who you'll see in a moment. We're premiering this video on YouTube on her 70th birthday. So this is a 70th birthday present. I don't know who's it to or who's it from. Anyway, it's to commemorate Srimala's, to celebrate Srimala's 70th birthday. And she's, for her 70th birthday, published this exquisite, this lovely book of poems called, in Srimala style, and we'll hear the poem later on, No Toast, No Marmalade. So we're going to be focusing quite a lot on this beautiful book of poems. But I also want to introduce Srimala to you if you don't know Srimala, and for myself, actually, frankly, to get to know Srimala better. So I thought I'd just say a little bit about how I got to know Srimala. I've seen Srimala around for many years, and I've always admired her from afar, as you do, but I never got to know her really. We used to go sometimes at the London Buddhist Centre, the council of the London Buddhist Centre, we'd go to Maisquin, where Srimala lives, with Subhuti, and we'd be on retreat with Subhuti, and quite often Srimala was tasked with cooking for us, and she'd make these very delicious meals for us. But you'd never see her. She'd appear very briefly and disappear. And she became, in my mind, a kind of fable. She spends a lot of time in Maisquin on her own. Srimala and I have been made by different gods, if such a thing could be imagined. She's very, you'll see, she's very different to me. So I didn't really get to know her. And then Subhuti asked me, I think Srimala might have asked him to ask me, but he asked me if I'd just look at some of Srimala's poems. Now, that is an occupational hazard for anyone writing poetry, is people want to show you their poems. And sometimes you wish they didn't, frankly. Anyway, so I was a bit intrigued at the idea of Srimala writing poems. As I said, I didn't really know her particularly. So I said, oh yeah, of course I'd go and look at her poems. And I remember very vividly, even now, we were on this retreat with the LBC Council, and I spent an afternoon in Srimala's kitchen. Subhuti and Srimala live in different parts of this little valley, mountain valley. It's not quite a valley, it's a little in the mountains in Wales, and going into Srimala's kitchen, and she just showed me these little poems, tiny little poems with just a few words, and I remember really vividly the atmosphere that kind of developed between us, and when I say between us, I mean between Srimala and I, and between Srimala and I and the poems. In fact, I mean between Srimala and I, the poems, and the view out the window. As we talked, the view out of the window, Srimala as a person, these little tiny poems on the page, seemed to create this sort of atmosphere of delicacy on one hand, but on toughness on another, and of something, well, you'd want to call it slightly mystical. It's the most unusual atmosphere, slightly mystical, except for that sounds far too grand a word. Anyway, I left feeling kind of uplifted in a very particular way, and I associated that very much with Srimala's very unusual blend of this sort of delicacy. Even delicacy is not quite right, because delicacy can feel like it's unbreakable, because Srimala is also very tough in my experience. But she's got this very intense inner world that you can't start to experience through the poems. And I think the poems are a really good way of experiencing that world. Very intense inner world, but she's not. It doesn't sort of. It doesn't. She doesn't speak a lot about it. It's sort of very. It's a very inner world, but an inner world that's touching everything all the time. And so I keep glancing out of the window as we were talking. And I remember crossing out a few things and saying, I'm not sure about that. But that's what I'd been asked to do, after all. So I got to know her, and that in a way feels like the first time I really met Srimala. And it's interesting that I first really met her through the poems. And I think it's a really good way to meet Srimala. Mala's been a central figure in the Triratna Buddhist order and movement for many, many years now. But this is a really good way, I think, of getting to know Srimala better. And then since then, we'd keep meeting, wouldn't we, Srimala? We'd meet up on a college meeting at Adhisthana, and we'd look at some more poems. And I remember liking one very much, and I said, "Oh, I like that one very much," and she was very pleased by that. One about central heating. I think I've asked her to read Srimala to read that. But and I remember her just really being ever more delighted by the poems. So the poems, and we'll talk about them as we go, but they're quite, you might call them spiritual poems, except for I have a kind of aversion to spiritual poems, generally speaking. Somebody a while ago wrote to me saying that they were writing short spiritual poems, and could I look at them? And I felt that give him some advice. And I felt like saying, well, my first advice was don't write short spiritual poems. That's where you're going wrong. Because they're short, sort of little spiritual things. They're often platitudinous. They're often spirituality on the cheap, in my experience, where you say a few apparently meaningful things, but you haven't really earned them. You know what I mean? So generally speaking, I'm a bit averse to spiritual poems. And Srimala's poems, I think, have a bit of that sense. But the difference is that nobody else could have written these poems but Srimala. And Srimala has and is living a life that earns the poems. She's not living next to a cafe and living off croissant and cappuccino. She's living a dedicated spiritual life up there in very, very, very rainy, cold Wales, very often for long, long periods on her own. She's a sort of hermit. In her own way. So the sort of thing that people often write, little short kind of spiritual things, which usually they haven't lived a life that earns them, and they've not got the depth of spiritual life that really, you can imitate this style very easily, I think, and people often want that. I actually can usually tell, and I don't like it. But what charmed me about Srimala's poems is that they speak so much for this very intense inner world that she has. They're so like her. Often the best poems that I read, you feel that they're the speech of the poet if they spoke in poetry. That's true of Robert Frost. It's true of Elizabeth Bishop. It's even true of Eliot, who I'm not so keen on anymore. I used to be. But you sort of feel that it's like their natural voice if they spoke in rhyme and meter in Robert Frost's case, or if they spoke in the wonderful forms that Elizabeth Bishop writes. If you look at a poem like Marianne Moore, the American poet, you just feel like this. She's talking to you. At the moment, I'm reading Byron and Don Juan, and you feel, as you read Don Juan, you feel that Byron is reading the poem in front of you. He's just talking to you. He just happens to talking on Octavia Rima. So what you get in poems that are worth reading, it's like the person's voice, their deeper voice, not just their literal voice that buys groceries or writes an email, their deeper voice. What would that be like if it was a poem? So what I feel with Srimala's poems in this collection that she's publishing for her birthday, that's what I feel. Anyway, look, enough of me and enough of what I think of Srimala and her poems. I thought, Srimala, first of all, hello to you, so that you can zoom in and join us now. So you'll now appear next to me, I think. And Garavati's very kindly doing our text. So
Srimala needs to unmute herself.
You need to unmute yourself, Srimala. Otherwise, we won't be hearing from you, even though we can see you.
Glasses on. Yep. Am I there now?
Yeah, you're now there. So welcome, Srimala. Really nice to see you.
Good.
Really nice to see you in your home of my Squin. So Srimala, I thought it'd be nice to just pitch straight in with a poem, because I've already, you can see already I've got a long style. You've got a short style. I will try and rein myself in, but I thought we could just pitch in straight away with one of this lovely poem about your mother. I'm going to just use the page numbers because none of the poems are titled, and I think that's quite right. So let's pitch on in with that. It's on page 49. You might want to say a little bit about the poem beforehand, or you might not. That's up to you.
No, except interesting that you say you say it's about my mother. Of course, she comes into it. Yes, I think it's about me. Anyway, I will read. I feel like a 12-year-old trying to pluck up the courage to tell my mother I want a bra. I don't really need one, and of course that's what she'll say. But I can't bear the embarrassment of exposing my flat chest in the changing rooms. And it's either that or wear a vest. Nowadays, I'd really rather not wear a bra. I'm far more comfortable in a vest. And I'm getting used to exposing myself. But still, sometimes I have to pluck up the courage.
Thank you, Srimala. And we're going to be hearing a lot more poems. I'm struck as we're talking now, actually, that, you say in the poem, I'm getting used to exposing myself. So I hope, I hope you're getting used to that. I know that it's not very congenial to you, so I hope that our little conversation will not be too exposing. But I really like this poem. I liked its complete straightforwardness and candidness. Communicates a lot of you, as you say. It is obviously very much a poem about you. But I wanted to use it as well as to go back to you as a 12-year-old and your mother, and just say something about, because some of the people who are listening into it, I feel this is you and I having a conversation, and the other people are listening in. But so some people listening into our conversation won't know you and won't know the world you've come from. It'd be quite good to get to know you and your mother, who would have told you that you didn't need a bra. So do you want
Right.
what were you like as a 12-year-old?
Oh, God. Oh. What was I like? 12-year-old. Well, I was very shy.
What was your because your mother was a teacher, wasn't she?
My mother was a teacher. I think maybe all right, I'm going to try going a bit different track and see where we go with this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My mother was a teacher, an English teacher, and I don't know from when, but I always thought I was going to be a teacher like her. Yeah, I very much appreciated her, admired her, benefited a lot from well, her attention in that sort of way. Yeah, I think I'd like to tell you just a little story. Okay, this is me. This is me. Sorry, this is what I do.
You've written poems, isn't
it? yes. Okay, I'm going to start somewhere else. It was probably a couple of months ago. For some reason, the name Gerald Manley Hopkins came up, and the name reminded me of my mother. Yeah, I suppose a poet. She was interested in, appreciated, and yeah, and partly I know I liked the sound of the name. I think when I was a child, that was I didn't read the poems myself for a while, but I liked the sound of the name. Anyway, I thought, oh, I'll just go off and have a little look. I was thinking more about my mother at that time. So yeah, I looked in one of our old poetry books and came up with a poem, the first line of which is what I remember, as kingfishers catch fire. And I just remember that phrase. I suppose my mother read it, spoke it, and it had an effect on me. Anyway, I then went on to look up some other poems that she'd I suppose she'd been reading and they influenced me. And well, one of which was Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then another one, as I was looking up, Thomas Hardy, Snow in the Suburbs. Yeah. And I read it through and I got a shock when I read the last couple of lines, because I thought, but that's my poem. And then I realized, oh, it wasn't. Maybe I was 9, 10, I don't know. I'd been asked at school to write a poem about a black cat. And I was sitting with my mother outside our French windows in the garden on the steps. And she was sort of encouraging me. And I just remembered that was what I wrote. A black cat comes, wide-eyed and thin. But I suppose we'd been looking at that poem or something, and it had made a strong impression on me. But I thought it was my first real poem. Anyway, maybe that gives you some idea of my mother with me. Yeah.
And did brothers and sisters and the world that you were from?
Right. Well, we were. Well. Yeah. Brother and sister. Elder brother, who's now Lokamitra, and an elder sister between us, Joanna. My parents were divorced when I was quite young, so we lived with my mother. We lived in Golders Green, North London. My grandparents lived in Totteridge, Whetstone, so we were sort of reasonably near to them. She was full-time teacher, 3 quite lively children to look after as well. She was very dedicated teacher, and gradually her career sort of took off. She began in a girls' school in East Barnet, but then I think it was from there she went to the infamous school Rising Hill in East London, and from there went on to Clissold Park in Stoke Newington. And really developed her career as an English teacher within the multicultural classroom. In fact, eventually became an advisory teacher in that field. Spent a year or two in the West Indies and sort of developing a teacher exchange program. My sister got to go over there with her one time, but I didn't.
So I thought we'd jump, because I wanted to make sure that we're focusing on the poems, but I do want to introduce you to people perhaps a little bit more. So you were ordained when you were 24 in 1974, I think.
75. 75, I think.
25. I thought it'd be nice to sort of say a little bit, I don't know, about how you got involved, and because many people watching this won't, they won't have any memories of that time, and they're part of our Tree Rattler history, aren't they? What was Banty like then? When did you meet him?
Mm.
How did things seem to you? 24-year-old, so how old were you when you first got involved? I mean, these might not be things you want to talk about,
Right.
but see what you do want to talk about, Srimala.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see a little bit there. Of course, there's probably quite a bit in my book Breaking Free. So if you haven't read that, you could.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I was. Well, I suppose. Yeah. It. Probably my introduction to Buddhism actually became at the end of my school days. My headmaster, who, well, to be honest, I didn't really like. However, he taught us comparative religion, and I think that's really where I got some sort of introduction to Buddhism. So I have that to thank him for. And then, well, my brother, Lokamitra. So he introduced me and, well, my then husband, Ray. Oh, maybe we weren't married then, but anyway, who later became Sona, introduced us to yoga, vegetarianism, and we just sort of moved on to Buddhism. Yeah. At the Archway Centre, we went along. I mean, it was in a way, Sona was much more sort of keen to begin with. I was pregnant with my first child. I'd been very keen. Okay, I'll just go back a little bit. I'd done a teacher training course because, of course, oh yes, I didn't finish off that story about being a teacher like my mother. I never actually got there. I did the training, but I didn't teach because I became a Buddhist. So even during my college days, yeah, I was married then. I just wanted to start having babies. Yeah. So I did. But at the same time, there was yoga, vegetarianism, and Buddhism. So yeah, I went along and I'll tell you, one of the things I do remember is at the Archway Centre, communication exercises. Now, I was, as I've said, rather shy. I went along with my husband, and there was my brother there, and I did a communication exercise with him, and it was weird. Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, it was hard for me with anybody, I think, then, but it was strange to do it with my brother. Yeah.
How much older than of you is Lokamitra?
He's 3 years older than me.
And he got involved before you, did he?
So yes, he did. Yeah. Yeah. So.
What did you make of the Archway Centre when you first went? Can you remember? A long time ago, I know.
Yeah, a long time ago. No, I can remember it. Yes, and some strange people. Somebody lived in a caravan round the back. He was the caretaker, Hugh. And what did I make of it? Yeah, hard to say. I'll have to think about it and write some poems.
Yeah, about your next collection. Can you
Yes, yeah.
remember meeting with Bante there? Sangha, actually the founder of Triratna. Was he there
Yeah,
then?
he was, well, actually, yes. I think the first time I went to the centre, we were going to, one of Bantu's talks. It was on the Tibetan series.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that was my first time, and I didn't know what was going on. Yes. And actually, I don't know if it was then, but we gave Banti a lift home in our car. We were living somewhere around there. And dear, yeah, hard to say. But then he went off on a break. So so I did see a little bit of him then. But just, it was at the centre in the car until, and then later I saw much more of him in Norfolk when we lived in Norfolk and nearby. Oh dear, yes.
And where were you ordained, Srimala, and how long was your ordination retreat? I bet you it wasn't 4 months or 3 months.
No, it was a weekend.
Right.
Yes, a weekend at Broomhouse Farm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was a mixed weekend. And one thing I remember about it, we did some study. I don't remember what we studied. But there was somebody there, and he was an order member. He's not around now. And I think he was a bit unhappy about family and the movement. And I think I did open my mouth. I think I did try to open my mouth to sort of say, well, what really is the matter? Here am I, I was actually pregnant with my second child at that time during my ordination, and saying, well, sort of, what's the problem in a way? Yeah. But obviously there was a problem for some.
So let's jump. I wanted that now. Sort of that gives a little bit of an introduction to you. Now, perhaps we'll see if we can talk more through the poems, as it were, because I know that a lot of people watching will want to hear more of the poems. And so let's go to page 43, the poem on page 43, and that'll start to introduce us to your life, sort of now. By now, I mean for the last wee while, but yeah. So why don't we hear that poem on page 43?
Yes. Okay. In the recent storms, the weather here hasn't been much out of the ordinary until last night. I lay awake, trying to relax, while the wind raged. It'll be going on all day, they say, with heavy rain too. Though it's hard to believe there's any wetness left in the sky. I chose to live here, so I can hardly complain, tempting though it is.
That's great, thank you, Srimala. I wanted to sort of focus a bit on I chose to live here. Can you say a little bit about that choice and how you chose and what you chose and so on and how that came about?
Yes, well, I suppose it didn't really come about in a really choosing sort of way. Well, somehow this place turned up. Subhuti and I used to go off walking in Wales occasionally from when we were in Birmingham. And one time, we were looking at what do you call them, estate agents. For me, it was sort of just for fun, but it's the sort of thing Subhuti does, keeps an eye out on properties and so on. Anyway, we ended up looking at a couple of places around here, and this was one of them. And well, to be honest, we both just really loved the place. We hadn't thoughts then of buying anywhere, although I suppose Subhuti did have, I think his mother's legacy. I knew that some money would be coming to me later. Anyway, we went off walking, and then we were up the top of a mountain, and just said we really must buy that place. And we did. For a while, didn't really know quite how we would use it, but I think very quickly I just knew I just wanted to live here, to be here. So, yeah.
Can you remember what was it?
What? Right. What it was?
Very isolated, isn't it?
It was. It's isolated. It was a old stone farmhouse and barn. What do you call it? Hadn't been lived in for quite a long time. What? I'm not sure what the area is around it, but yeah, not a lot of land, but a bit all around, in the middle of sheep fields. But then it's very open, but with sort of a rim of mountains all around. Yeah, so it's not. I mean, many places I think in Wales are rather dark, and sort of hills towering over you rather. Whereas we're in the hills here, but it's open. It's open too. Yeah. So I think very quickly I just knew I wanted to live here. Previous to that, when I was still when I was in Birmingham, well, I did go to France a few times. My father had a place there, and I used to have ideas of, oh, it would be nice to have a whitewashed cottage in France and be there. Well, this is better. This is better, really, despite the weather. Yes, so the weather comes with it. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much a place of weather, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Very much a place of weather.
Yeah.
And was it partly for you, because you have you saying earlier on that you were very shy as a child and so on, and you got involved with Sri Ratna when having a family was more unusual, and at times, from what I hear, slightly frowned upon, and so on, for some people at least. And you went on then to be a public preceptor. You were ordaining women in India. I know you've got a very strong feeling for India. I think you still go out there, don't you?
Yeah.
So were you was there also for you a sort of moving away from a more public life, do you think? And
well, I mean, I suppose I just, I really felt, how to put it? I just needed that sort of space. Well, in a way, I suppose for a while alongside. So, alongside the more outward going work that I was doing, I also needed that sort of space. And then just, I suppose, gradually, I think while I was in Birmingham, gradually feeling that I'll go back a little bit. Yes, it seemed with I say Birmingham, I suppose the sort of the base of the public preceptor work was sort of from Birmingham, and then I was in India too, and yeah, gradually I was focusing more on India rather than like ordinations over here. Other people were taking those on. So I suppose I felt sort of India and Wales, or India and, you know, my space. That was enough. I didn't. So I gradually moved out of well, doing ordinations over here and work here. Yeah.
Because had you lived in communities a lot before you? Because you've got two daughters, haven't you?
Yeah.
And grandchildren and so on.
Yes, I've got two daughters. There was an attempt once at moving into a community, me and the girls and other women. That didn't work out. And then in Norwich, well, there were a number of us women with children, and we'd get together, and sometimes we started having ideas of communities, but we never quite got there. I did for a while live with a Mitra and her young son. We spent some time together, and yeah, then when I moved, well, when the girls were old enough to look after themselves, then I moved to Birmingham, and that really was my first community, living with in Sangadevi and the others.
In Majamaloka.
That's right. So the Marmalade community. Yeah.
So let's go back to my screen, because it feels like it's very much become a world, and we'll say more about my screen as we go along through the poems. But let's hear another poem. It's time for another poem, I think. Let's hear
Yep.
that lovely poem on page 51.
Yes. This morning I drove down to Bala, startled squirrels on the road, dog roses flashing from the hedges. The man at the dump was very helpful, and I had a chat with Marion by the bins. But our engines were running, so I couldn't really hear what he said.
I like I like the sort of comedy of that very much, and the vividness of the squirrels and the dog roses, and the man at the dump being very helpful. Somehow, it's funny. You see what you see. I don't know whether people get this yet, but I feel that the poems very much speak in your voice, but they sort of speak in your voice as if you were speaking poetry, as it were. You might actually just introduce us to Merion as a kind of, because I know he's been very important to both you and Subhuti up there. I mean, you very much become honorary Welsh citizens, it seems to me. But
Yeah. So Marion lives at the end of the road, just at the foot of the mountain. And well, it was him who rebuilt this place. He was the son of the farmer up there. So his father introduced us to him, thinking that maybe he could take the job on. And well, he was wonderful. He's a really good builder, craftsman, and well, a lovely man. So we got on really well, and we got on very well at working out what we wanted together. And since then, well, he's just our really good friend, our neighbour, and and during the course of the time, he got married and now got 4 children. Yeah.
And the word mice gwyn means something. What does mice gwyn mean?
Mice gwyn. Well, gwyn, white, mice, field or place. But actually, Robin, the farmer who used to own this place, said that it can be blessed or pure. So it can be a blessed land.
Because you've got a stone, you've even got a stone circle there, haven't you, in mice gwyn? In
We
a little,
have. We put it up ourselves, but yes. Well, actually, Marion, really. Marion in his figure.
I remember the stone circle and the little kind of brook that runs through your property, and just as you say, this wonderful sense of the river, all these mountains all around you, and we'd go walks, and we were there on these very, very incredibly windy hills. An incredibly tough world up there. Very beautiful, but quite austere, isn't it? So let's carry on a bit more with Mice Gwyn, because Mice Gwyn, it seems to me, is a real inspiration for you, because so many of the poems in No Toast, No Marmalade really are about Mice Gwyn and about your life there. And so let's hear you read the poem on page 52. Another. I think these are me just picking out ones almost at random that I particularly liked, but there are so many others I could have picked.
Yep, good. Ah, yes. The inspector was a lovely chap. He wanted to move in and leave the world behind. He gave me lots of tips about my fire and the hot water, and bees and honey and making mead, sloe gin and blackberry brandy. Well, you have to, don't you, he said, living so far from the pub.
That's great. Somehow particularly comic, given your lives.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but also somehow to me captures something of the sort of, I don't know, the sort of the neighborliness and community mindedness that you have. You always seem to me to meet people very much as you find them, and I can just imagine that scene somehow.
And it's so nice when people like the place.
Yes.
So when he responded like that, it was just delightful. Yeah, and I've had a postman and somebody else come down and say, "Oh, wow, what a wonderful place!" And yeah, so nice.
Yeah, place is so important to us, isn't it? I was talking just now about how place must be a bit like nests are to birds. They express the being of the bird, don't they? They're not just a literal place where you have eggs and so on. They're a kind of they're the kind of intermediary between you and the world. They're sort of psyche made into a place, and I know that Mice Gwyn has become very, very important to both you and Subhuti in that way, as a place in that deeper sense.
Yeah, yes.
Let's hear some more about that place. I thought the poem let's hear that lovely poem on page 59.
Yep. Taking a few logs from the woodpile, I disturbed a mouse. It scampered over the logs, in and out and down until it disappeared into the earth. I felt sad then, as if I'd built a block of dream residences for the locals, and now I was demolishing them.
I like that. I felt sad then, as if I'd built a block of dream residences for the locals, and now I was demolishing them. It feels like almost Mice Gwyn is a dream residence in some ways, although in some ways it sounds frankly a bit of a nightmare residence. I mean, it's interesting, the log piles and stone walls and compost bins feature in your poems quite a lot. Do you want to say a bit about that? I mean, these are highfalutin poems, aren't they?
Yeah. so these are sort of my favourite activities. Really, is moving bits of wood around and stones and messing about with my compost. It's yeah, I suppose it's, I don't know, stuff of the earth. That's what's here. Yeah,
what you engage with.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think, are you often on, my sense is that you're a bit often on your own at my screen. I mean, it'd be good
Mm,
to give a bit of sense of, it's not quite that you're living with Subhuti in the way that
mm,
most people would sort of think.
mm,
Might be quite good at this moment whilst we're thinking about log piles and to compost bins and stones and so on, to say a little bit about how your life shapes for you in my screen.
mm, mm,
You've
mm,
got a shrine room there, for instance. Most people haven't got a beautiful
mm,
converted bar, shed with huge stones, fabulous stones, turned into a shrine room with a beautiful blue
mm.
Buddha that I think Bante gave you. I think
That's right. Yeah,
Bante blessed the shrine room, didn't
yeah, yeah.
it?
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. I suppose the working out of the place sort of came on gradually. Um, where I am was the original cottage, so that was done up first. Subhuti has an extension to the cowshed, but it's it's perfectly suitable for him.
It doesn't quite capture it, doesn't it? But it is an extension of the cowshed. But
Yes, yes, yes. And then sort of in between, well, it's built onto the cottage is the yeah, the old barn that is our shrine room. And yeah, wonderful. Well, the focus of the property. Um, what's I going to say? Um, yeah. No, yeah, now I'm just sort of lost. I'm looking outside and this wonderful place.
yeah, that's what I would be doing now if I were you as well. What was it like? I mean, Subhuti, Banti came, didn't it? But perhaps say a little bit about that visit. There's a lovely photograph of Subhuti. One of my favourite photographs, actually, is with Subhuti sort of guiding Banti around the property. And Banti, for those of you who are watching who don't know Banti, Banti means the name means reverent teacher. He's a teacher and founder and sort of genius, I think, of Sri Ratna and the friend to so many of us. Yeah, what was, just say a little bit about his visit, because he wouldn't have been able to see the property very
He
well with his
couldn't.
eyes.
No, he obviously though got a sense of it, and yeah. So he came in. He came in and had a cup of tea with me in my house. Went down to Subhuti's. We had a meal with him. Gave him a meal, and he had a rest. And yes, came into the shrine and blessed our shrine. Um, and actually, yes, another photograph. Unfortunately, yes, I haven't got a copy at hand. I keep it. I have it on my computer screen. One of me and Banti standing outside the shrine room door.
Mm.
And first of all, I was just standing next to him, and I don't think we were touching, but he said, "Oh, come closer, come closer." Yes. So I, got my arm linked with him. It's just so lovely. It's such a lovely image to have. Yeah, Banti there with me, and we're both just enjoying ourselves. Yeah. Oh yes, it was wonderful to have him here, and he obviously really enjoyed being here. Um, yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you spend long periods of time on your own there? Because I know Subhuti is in India and
Mm,
Hungary and goes to the LBC and so on.
yeah. Yes, I have done. I mean, in fact, I suppose, well, this last year, or even almost 2 years, not so much because, well, last year Subhuti stayed on here for not going to India and had a long solitary, so he was around then. This year, of course, we've been stuck here. And well, to be honest, it's been very nice for me. Yeah, not being on my own so much. And oh, I don't know, some things we've been getting on with, you know, bits of wood and stones and so on out in the garden that I might not have been able to do myself. Well, some of you have seen Subhuti, well, and I a bit, built a stupa, which was wonderful to do that. But yeah, previous to that, I've had a lot of time on my own, and for quite a number of years, that was great. That was great. It began to get, I think I began, I don't know, a few years ago to start finding I was getting a bit too isolated, really. Maybe getting a bit older, knees not working so well, and yeah, sort of, yeah, not so easy to be in contact with friends or see them or people to come here, because yeah, it's in a sense far away. Travel isn't that easy. So I was feeling that. In fact, we even began thinking about moving. Yeah, really, yeah, sort of for my sake, really. However, that thought has been put aside for now, because the last couple of years have been absolutely fine. So I'm hoping we can go on for quite some time. Yeah, yeah.
I hope so as well. So let's look at another poem. Let's look at I can't remember quite why I chose these ones, but let's go to poem. I think I was trying to choose some of the longer ones, Srimala.
You had a job trying to find them, didn't you?
Not many. So the poem on page 42, I thought you read to us. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought there might be an opportunity to go for a walk, but there wasn't. I had a cup of tea and listened to the rattling of the chimney, watched as the sky grew dark and the trees shook and the rusty leaves sparkled and the grass was green. I'll have to brave it sooner or later, because the bird feeder is nearly empty.
You know, it strikes me. I really like that first little verse. I thought there might be an opportunity to go for a walk, but there wasn't. So, I sort of, that's somehow again so you, but it's also very much like that the weather patterns and you know, like the rain you were talking about earlier on in Wales. And then that I have to brave it sooner or later because the bird feeder is nearly empty. I remember as we talked, looking out at the bird feeders, and
Yeah.
I don't know, the sort of preciousness of that. I was talking recently just about, I was walking with Donna Utah, and we heard a robin sing, you know, in the little park just here. And anyone who doesn't feel a little bit of something when you see a bird, you know, yeah, the simplicity of, because the bird feeder is really, nearly empty. Really like that. I really like that. So let's have a couple more of my squid, and then we might start to go on to some other themes. So perhaps let's have the poem on page 36. Oh yeah, I do seem to be choosing the longer ones. Some of the poems are only 2 lines, and I thought that they wouldn't, you know, you blink and you miss it sort of thing.
That's right. Yes, yes.
So I thought we'd go for the slightly longer ones.
Okay. And Merion features in this, although I haven't put his name. But actually, I did get outside today, and my fingers didn't freeze. I only went out to empty the compost and got caught up wondering how to arrange my new grass pile. And what was I going to do with the rubble? Which led me down to the excavation project around the stone wall. I got the rake out just to clear away a bit of earth and a few small stones. And then I nearly ruined my gloves pulling a very large rock away. I don't really know what I'm doing here. I began with a vision, but I put that aside. I wanted to make a space between the earth mound and the wall. A space to put things, like the rubble and the rotting wood, that we might want to use for something. Or maybe the space would be a den for my grandchildren, or for me. I don't want help. I'm in no hurry for outcomes. Just excavating, making space for something.
I mean, that's your longest poem collecting through. You managed to get over the page, which is.
It's quite something, yes.
I remember when we first talked, I was saying, well, why don't you try and write long poems? And that didn't come off at all, did it? But I really like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I began with a vision, but I put that aside. Have you got anything to say about that little part of the poem? What did you? I mean, I think I know. I like that very much. Something very, I don't know, down to earth about it. But I don't know whether you've got anything you wanted to say about that.
Well, I don't know. I suppose sometimes I might, start trying to work out what I want to do or make. But then when I start getting on with it, maybe it gets frustrating. It's not working out, and then actually, I don't need that plan. I can just get on and get more of a feel of what I'm doing, and in a way, play. Yeah.
Well, it's like, as you say at the end of the poem, making space for something.
Yeah.
It feels that that's very like you somehow. That feels to me one of the deep parts of your life is you've been making space for something.
Yeah.
And you don't want to say what that is. You just want to make a space for it.
That's right. Yes.
Almost as if my screen is a bit of a space,
Yeah.
making a space for something.
Yes. I think I've don't know if I've learned it or allowed myself it, but realize I can make a space. I don't need to know what it's for. I enjoy making space. Yeah.
So let's have a last one on my screen, then we'll just have a few more before we finish. There's so many I'd like to go on to, but let's have a look at that poem on page 61, which is a very short poem. Everyone just managed to go beyond 2 lines, which is the shortest poem, I think.
I set off to the barn to find a hammer. After an hour or so, I come back without having looked for it.
I don't know, that again just seems very emblematic of you, your life there, and so on. But yeah, it's striking, isn't it, how much your life and my screen have sort of joined together and become one almost.
Oh.
Let's go to your inner life, I thought we might.
Yeah.
We'll look at just 3 poems on your inner life. So there's that poem on 24. I thought we could start with that.
Oh, yeah. Through my window, moonlight woke the mountain and startled me. Not like the pink gold light of evening sun on cloud, but stark, dazzling white against deepest blue. Rooted in the dark, the mountain woke, and all I could do was turn away and try to sleep.
I mean, one of the feelings you get reading the poems is Well, partly the difficulty of the place itself, especially spending, often long periods of time on your own and sort of so isolated.
Mm.
Um, with your Buddhist practice that supports that, but you're not shy of admitting difficulty, or at least suggesting it. Um,
No,
there's quite a bit of the difficult in the poems, isn't there?
yes.
And this somehow refers to it, but that in a very kind of discreet and sort of, I don't know, delicate way or something.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, yes. Well, yeah, life is tough, can be tough, yeah.
Mm.
Hmm, what to say? Yeah. In a way, it's ah. I suppose, yes, I suppose, what am I trying to say? Well, yeah, sometimes sort of scribbling things down, it helps to relieve, yeah, I suppose sort of expressing the toughness of things, it's helpful. And I think some of my poems have sort of, yeah, have been like that. I think only gradually, I suppose I've realised they can be more than that.
Mm.
Well, actually, a lot to do with you, Maitreyabandhu. Yeah. Uh, well, I suppose, yeah, gradually coming to realise that actually I did want to share my poems with other people.
Mm.
Yes, in a way, I'm quite, well, let's say, well, introverted, private. Maybe only showed them to a few friends to begin with, but I suppose seeing the response of other people, yeah, I've sort of realised there is something there to share, and I want to share. And I was thinking, I'm really actually very fond of my poems. Yeah, and actually, it's been really nice to see them in a book. Oh, yeah, and yeah, I want to share them with others.
Mm.
Mm,
Indeed.
mm.
Yeah. So let's hear two more of your poems. I mean, I've put them under this rubric of your inner life, but in a way, I think with the poems that they're also your inner life and your sense of the world around you are very unified, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah,
But sometimes there's a more clear kind of emphasis on your inner experience.
mm.
Yeah, let's hear that lovely poem on page 20.
Not exactly a stamp collecting day. There's no rain, but the wind is cold. More of a sitting in my window with the promise of inspiration sort of day.
I love I love that more of a sitting in my window with the promise of inspiration sort of day. So it's a bit again a little bit like that, making a space for something, isn't it?
Mm,
Uh, Not looking for inspiration, not sort of trying to grasp at inspiration, but making a space for it.
yeah,
Um, that's how it felt to me.
mm, yeah.
Means Wordsworth talked about wise passivity. Um,
Ah,
and
yeah,
Keats talked about famously negative capability.
yeah,
There's quite a lot of that, isn't there? There's sort of wise passivity.
yeah.
Um,
Mm, mm.
and then let's hear the poem on page 91. Oh, hang on, have I got that right? Yes,
Another one.
yes, yeah. And then we'll look at
Yep,
three more poems and then we'll
yep.
conclude around.
Mm. Ah, yeah. I reach out for others' words because I don't know where to look for my own. I should look for them in the garden, among the geraniums and the wild strawberries.
Hmm. Let's actually hear that one again because it's so short, and I think
Oh,
I think it communicates so much of you in such a short space.
I reach out for others' words because I don't know where to look for my own. I should look for them in the garden, among the geraniums and the wild strawberries.
That's lovely. That's great. I don't know that I don't know where to look for my own words. That's been one of the themes, hasn't it, of your
Yeah.
life?
Yeah.
And sometimes and somehow I don't know quite why, but that is the place to look for them in the garden. Among the geraniums and the wild strawberries. With poetry, you sort of get it or you don't you? You sort of think, well, I kind of get that. I said, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You're trying to somehow find a kind of authenticity of completely natural speech, and so often it feels like they're other people's words you don't really mean. I
Yeah.
want to sort of start to conclude by talking a little bit about your life with Subhuti. I mean, I suppose I wanted to do this partly because I feel such a debt of gratitude to Subhuti, myself. Just to share a little story of my own, I remember when I first went to Pamaloka when I asked for ordination, and Subhuti was leading study on Bante's 10 Pillars of Buddhism. And I remember being in this caravan, within these caravans outside of Pamaloka, and I date a bit back myself. I was in these caravans just outside in the grounds of Pamaloka before they could afford it to build any kind of extension, and these coal caravans. But I remember studying with Subhuti, and I'd never met before then, I don't think, somebody much older than me. And of course, when you're young, anyone, even middle-aged, seems irredeemably older than you. Somebody that I thought was much older than me, had more energy than me, had more kind of thought per square inch than anyone I'd ever met before, but also who could have a real laugh, who could engage with me very, very seriously, engage with the Dharma very deeply. I was very, very struck by that. So Subhuti is my public preceptor, Sivadra is my private preceptor, both beloved teachers of mine. Subhuti's had a major shaping influence on my own life, almost as much as Bhante himself, I think, because I wasn't taught by Bhante, but I was very much, I spent many hours sitting and listening and taking furious notes to Subhuti. And I feel, so when I went to my screen, that my screen is also a world of Subhutis as well as your world. I'll just say a little bit about, I don't know, life with Subhuti, and then let's hear one or two poems about that. And yeah, I don't know what you want to say about that, Srimala.
No. Yeah. Well, yes, some of your words, yes. Full of energy, thoughts, ideas, etc., etc. Sometimes it's exhausting.
I'm sure he's not listening, Srimala, it's fine.
I suppose sometimes I have to say to myself, well, I chose to live here. What can I say? What can I say? Oh dear. Well, I'm just incredibly fortunate, I think, that I am living, well, alongside Subhuti. The way we live, it works really, really well, having our own place, but we can also be together sometimes, have our space when we need it. Yeah, in a way, our own lives, going here and there too. No, but
That's all you need to say in a way.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very lovely. So let's hear two poems.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're about Subhuti, but let's see what you think. But they're both quite short, I think. So let's hear that poem on page 72.
Oh yes. Well, I might just preamble this. This was from the Maitreyabandhu days. So when we had the building there, that men's community upstairs, public space, whatever, downstairs. So we'd have our meetings down there. I was in the community down the road. If only I could come and sit in a corner of your room, then I wouldn't need to have the heating on downstairs.
It's one of those really tiny poems that sort of, I don't know, that was the one that I remember reading that at Madhyamaloka, not at Adhisthana, when we were on the college meeting, and I remember thinking, oh yeah, that's just fine, you know. I don't know, you don't want to unpack things, but just it's only 4 lines long. It does everything it needs to do. Why don't you read it again, Srimala? Sometimes with these short ones, it's good to hear them twice.
If only I could come and sit in a corner of your room, then I wouldn't need to have the heating on downstairs.
And then let's go to the poem on 76. Somehow this is, for me, very striking I mean, I don't know whether, I didn't realize that last one was from Maitreyabandhu, so that's interesting. But with this one, this feels, I very much see the two of you living alongside each other, as you say, which I think is a better expression than with, because you both have your own very, very strongly independent lives. But somehow this speaks for me very much of that.
Yeah, we were actually both retreating separately at this time, so something of that might come through. how it was for me at a particular time of it. I need some light relief. Alone with you around is too intense. I'll laugh about it later, but for now, I'll keep climbing up ladders and sliding down snakes.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. So look, Srimala, time is marching on. So I think we'll draw this to a conclusion. So if we can just spotlight me for a moment, and then I'll just say a bit more about the book. So really lovely talking to Srimala about this book, No Toast, Not Marmalade. And we're going to hear one last poem in a minute. We've read these together, we've explored them together, and it's really lovely to see them, very beautifully designed. I think Dhamrati designed it, didn't he, Srimala? Very beautiful design by Dhamrati.
He finished touching it.
Oh yes, because I remember you sent me your original design, which is it's very close, isn't it? I mean, you didn't do very much, just like a bit of Bob, but it's a beautiful book. So I would really recommend you get. They're lovely. There's just so much to enjoy in the poems, as I hope you've seen just by hearing some of them today. So you can get, the best way to get them, we've got them here at the London Buddhist Centre, but of course Srimala has just sent me a box of poems so that we could sell them here at the Buddhist Centre, the London Buddhist Centre. But of course we've just closed the London Buddhist Centre for our second time, which we're very sorry to do. Of course the London Buddhist Centre is still very much online, just as this is online now. But we've had to actually close the doors for the meantime until we feel it's appropriate to open again. We'd like to open as soon as we can. So once we're open, you can buy them from the London Buddhist Centre. But the easiest way is to get them is to email Srimala. So in the chat, something will pop up, and when we post this, it'll say this. But if you email srimalabooks@gmail.com, that will get to Srimala, and she'll then contact you and send you the poem. So you'll get like a little present in the post from her. All you'll need for that little present is to send her £6, And I was saying to Srimala, £6 won't buy you a cup of coffee and a cake in London, but what it'll buy you for this book is a lot to enjoy and to take on retreat with you and to read before your meditations, like I read. So yeah, just to remind you of that, Srimala Books. Is it Srimala Books or book?
Books.
I thought so, yeah. Srimala Books at gmail.com. Yeah. So she'll then be in touch with you and you'll get a little, not so little, I mean, it looks little and it's got little tiny poems in, but the atmosphere they create is very special. But let's finish, Srimala, with the final poem. I want to say the title poem, but that sounds too grand, although effectively it is the title poem. But let's hear this final poem from No Toast and No Marmalade.
Just sitting with a plate in my hand. No toast, no marmalade.
That's great. That just says it all. Just sitting with a plate in my hand, no toast, no marmalade. So thank you very much, Srimala. Really nice to have an opportunity to talk like this together. It's a shame it's virtually. We originally were saying we come to the LBC and we try and chat in front of everybody. I don't know how that would have been either.
Maybe worse.
At least you're still in your great place of Maesguin, your white place, snowbound place. So really lovely to talk to you. I hope that people listening in on our conversation will write to Srimala Books at gmail.com and get her to send you her collection and come to the Buddhist Centre when we're open. And just to say, happy birthday, your 70th birthday. So happy birthday. Really great that we can celebrate your 70th birthday by publishing a book of poems. And I want to thank you on behalf, well, of myself, obviously, but also so many people have benefited from your work, Srimala. What we've been doing today is we've been mostly, focusing on the poems because we really wanted to do that because that's been a sort of secret life of yours, an inner life, an esoteric life of yours. But you've ordained many women into the Triratna Buddhist order. You've been a friend to many, many people. You seem to me always open to friendship. You've supported Subhuti very much. You've been a very important, albeit sometimes quiet, presence in our movement and order. And I wanted to thank you on behalf of us all and to wish you a very, very happy birthday and to rejoice in your first collection of poems, No Toast, No Marmalade.
Well, thank you, Maitreyabandhu. Yeah. Words are failing me now, but I really enjoyed that. Yes. I mean, and I'm a bit sorry that I think there were some sort of thoughts in my mind that I could have, said a little bit more, but it's just a very difficult situation for me to get them out. So I'm sorry about that, but I've really enjoyed it. Lovely. You've done it so nicely.
And you've got them out in the book, haven't you?
Yes.
You've got your thoughts out in the book.
Yeah.
All right then, Srimala. So thanks very much. Very nice to talk to you.
Yeah.
And we'll speak to you again soon.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yes.